Conditions apply.
Don't miss the Flight Centre Travel Expo coming soon, showcasing hundreds of destinations and over 160 exhibitors. Book exclusive deals and save on your next holiday. ASB Showgrounds, Green Lane, Saturday 15 and Sunday 16 February 9 to 4. See you there.
Newstalk ZB 4:15. An Australian-based political party may be in the running at this year's general election. The Perth-based Expat party is in full swing to register with the Electoral Commission to lobby for Kiwis living in Australia. They have a number of policies they want to put in place to help New Zealanders living overseas. The party spokesman, Nick Toulon, is with me. Hi, Nick.
Good evening, Larry.
Now, why are you forming this party?
Well, there's 20% of the New Zealand population lives outside the country, so we feel that representation at parliamentary level is appropriate.
But expats are ineligible to stand for Parliament, as I understand it. So even in the unlikely event that you got the 5% threshold, you still wouldn't be able to be represented.
As long as we've entered in the country within the last 3 years, the Electoral Commission has informed us we are eligible to stand.
OK, so when are you going to file all your papers?
Over the next 48 hours, the Electoral Commission are going to receive our papers and review them. It's about a 6-week process.
And what do you actually stand for?
Okay, we stand for a couple of things. Firstly, there's been a little bit of conjecture that we're after unemployment benefits. I'd like to squash that right now. We are not advocating the dole one bit. I heard Cameron Slater on yesterday that referred to us as bludgeoning Kiwis. 99% of the people we've spoken to, 99.9%, do not want to be associated with the dole, nor do they want the dole whatsoever. What is of concern to us, though, is New Zealanders that have moved to Australia after 2001, set up a family here, bought a house and had children. In a few circumstances, families that have had disabled children are currently not covered by the Australian government, and there is a good example with the Glove family over in the Gold Coast that are having to support their disabled child up to $200 a week, which would be covered by the Australian government if these children of theirs are in fact Australian citizens. There's a bit of a grey area now. Basically, we have 200,000 stateless nomad Kiwis that aren't really attached to New Zealand or Australia, and I think this is an important issue to keep the discussion alive with.
All right.
He was over last week.
So what can your party do about it? What can the New Zealand government do about it? Because it's actually not their decision at the end of the day, it's the Australian government's.
That's correct, and we want to keep this discussion alive at parliamentary level. There has been some cases of protesting in the street and community networks. We don't feel this is a great image for Kiwis, particularly when the Australian media get involved. It's very easy to typecast one New Zealander as the 600,000 over here. If we keep this at a very moderate level, very toned down level, and keep the intellectual debate alive, we feel that we may be able to make progress.
Just on the Australian government's welfare entitlements, I think there are some inconsistencies and some discrimination there. However, have you applied for permanent residence? You've been there, 7 years? Have you applied for permanent residence?
I've been here for 7 years, and initially I didn't come over here as a permanent resident. I came here on a working holiday, I met a girl, and I stayed here, and I didn't really think about my rights or what I was entitled to until very recently. We've found that's the same case with hundreds of thousands of New Zealanders, and that is something that needs to be brought up to more attention. Really needs to be given to it.
Yeah, but why is this a New Zealand issue? Because you can apply for permanent residence, which will then allow access to entitlements after a period of time. Why can't the people over there do that?
It is a difficult process to gain permanent residency here.
It's not impossible, though, is it?
It's not impossible, but it is a difficult process.
Back to your political party then. You believe that there is a diminishment of expat rights due to government's disinterest in expat matters. That's one example. Do you have any others?
Well, I think the example is that New Zealanders traditionally don't vote who live in Australia, so why would it be an issue to the New Zealand government to push? But I think you've got hundreds of thousands of expat Kiwis over here, some that have strong cultural and financial ties to New Zealand. By getting them to vote again and partaking in the election and representation at parliamentary level can only be a good thing for the country. We would like to look at expat investment back into New Zealand. And also this internet party is of great interest to us as well. We support a lot of the policies that have been put forward. We think a mobile workforce, there's 1 million expat Kiwis out there. If they can sort of reintegrate into New Zealand, repatriate and bring capital investment and income back to New Zealand, that's a very good thing for the country as well.
Some will think, though, Nick, and you know this to be true, some will think, well, look, you've left New Zealand, your decision, let it go do your own stuff.
That's fair enough, but there is 200,000 people in flux, stateless Kiwis. It's not good for Australia and it's not good for New Zealand. Do you want disenfranchised Kiwis coming back to New Zealand with their tails between their legs? I don't think that's a good thing either.
But they can come back to New Zealand any time they like.
They can, but should they, who have been working in Australia for 10 years, come back to New Zealand and start demanding entitlements? What? They've been paying their taxes to the Australian government.
Well, if they're back in New Zealand, they are entitled to entitlements because they're a New Zealand citizen. There's no issue there, is there?
That's correct. I think it's in the New Zealand's interest as well to keep this discussion alive.
The other thing, Nick, you say you want the right to vote. You have that if you haven't been. You have that if you haven't been absent for 3 years. If you come back within 3 years, you can vote. Is that the deal?
That is correct. That's an old law that came through in 1956 before the internet, where New Zealanders weren't really in touch once they left the shores they permanently set up.
You want that changed, do you?
We think it's... Well, when we... on the weekend, we went round and spoke to about 550 New Zealanders, and there were a lot that still had strong cultural and financial ties to New Zealand, but living in Perth, where I'm based at the moment, it's a huge cost and distance to come back regularly, even though they have plans to come over, earn enough money to earn a house deposit, come back to New Zealand and set up. So we think keeping New Zealanders voting and keeping them connected to the country and still passionate about the affairs of New Zealand is only a good thing. There's a lot of talk about the brain drain. Well, if Kiwis are voting in New Zealand and taking great interest and thinking about coming back, I think that can only be a great thing.
Thank you for your time. That is Nick Toulon, Expat Party spokesman from Perth. Newstalk ZB, it is now 4:22.
ZB Headlines.
With the new ANZ blocking, Kim.com's extradition to the US could end up being part of a post-election deal between Labour and the Greens. A man who once sold drugs to murdered Christchurch prostitute Mallory Manning has described hearing a blood-curdling scream the night she was killed. Subcontractors and suppliers of the collapsed Mainzeal Property and Construction Company have a long way to see if they'll get back any of the more than $106 million owed to them. 37 people have lost their jobs as part of a supermarket shake-up, and an investigation's underway after what's thought to be cocaine found in a container in Christchurch. News updates every 15 minutes or as it breaks on Newstalk ZB.
Time saver traffic on Newstalk ZB. Preview south with Dream Team Fantasy Super Rugby. Now the Southern Motorway southbound, so from Kaiba Pass through to Green Lane, again from Princess Street through to Takanini. Citybound heavy from Penrose through to Market. Heavy on the northwestern westbound from St Luke's through to Te Atatu. The southwestern northbound light flows at Maioro Street. Northern northbound heavy from Esmond. Create your Dream Team Fantasy Super Rugby team at dreamteam.co.nz.
Do you find banks difficult to deal with and looking to buy a property? Already own a property and looking for a loan or a refinancing alternative? Look no further. FMT Lending, the property lending division of First Mortgage Trust. They've been providing first mortgage property finance for over 17 years, and they're good at it. You'll be dealing with experienced, knowledgeable and helpful specialists. FMT Lending have funds to lend on flexible, competitive terms and offer interest-only loans. For a hassle-free consultation regarding your property finance needs, call First Mortgage Trust now on 0800 32 113. That's 0800 32 113, or go to firstmortgagetrust.co.nz. Your bank alternative, FMT Lending.
Has the Reserve Bank's decision shut you out of building your own home in Auckland? Then take a look at Marsden City. With the Reserve Bank excluding construction lending from low deposit restrictions, where are you going to find an affordable, quality alternative? Marsden City sections start at just $140,000, with house and land packages from only $450,000. Go to marsdencity.co.nz for more.
In the
The crowd goes wild for dress-ups thanks to Look Sharp Store. Look Sharp Store is your one-stop costume shop for dress-ups for all the big occasions. Hundreds of costumes, enormous variety and amazing value. Choose your costume and get into the spirit of those sports events or any event this summer. One-stop fun shop, Look Sharp Store. 6 superstores Auckland-wide, including new store in St Luke's just behind the warehouse. Or shop online at looksharpstore.co.nz.
Get great prices every day at Countdown with Tui or Export Gold bottles 24-pack, just $29.99. And Dirt's Brut 750ml, only $19.99 each. Only until Sunday and only at Countdown while stocks last.
Larry Williams Drive with ANZ, supporters of New Zealand's Winter Olympic team on Newstalk ZB.
Newstalk ZB, it is now 4:26. Barry Saber from Parliament. Hello, Barry.
Hello, Larry.
Anyway, .com, Labor and the Greens. What is their position, Barry? Can you run...
You know, look, it's being reported now that there could be a deal done after the election that would allow .com to avoid extradition to that country, to the United States. But the fact is that, look, we have an extradition treaty that we have to both honour. I mean, if we have one of our criminals in the United States, then we would expect the US, providing the documentation is correct, to return that person to this country, just as the Americans expect us to return theirs to their country. But fact is, I guess, in the .com issue, Larry, there was so much illegality in terms of the raid on .com's residence the year before last, that it really does make it difficult. But Russell Norman saying the Greens would probably fight to keep .com in New Zealand. Now, David Cunliffe was asked this, and I think he was trying to be just too clever. He wasn't ruling out Labor agreeing to that if it does form the next government, but he says, look, any such deal will have to wait until after the election. But look, if the courts decide that the paperwork is in order, the extradition, I think, under the treaty would have to go ahead anyway. But there's no doubt that, look, everybody is looking at .com at the moment because of his internet party. I saw him tweet today saying that if he doesn't reach 5% before the election campaign starts, then he will pull the plug and throw his weight, not inconsiderable weight, I might say, behind another party. Now, we know that Russell Norman has beaten a path to the Kim.com mention door. He makes no bones about trying to talk .com out of forming the Internet Party, saying it could split the vote and assist National. .com's, Don Brash has also been to the Coatesville Mansion to offer a bit of advice. And now there are reports that Winston Peters has been there too. Now, it was classic Winston when we tried to quiz him about whether, in fact, he had also visited Kim.com. Have a listen to this.
You got my answer. That's the question to their question. I'm not talking about who I see or what I see and why I do it, unless it's a matter of public interest, and that's the end of it. So you don't know a lot of things about my diary. They are private, and I'm not going to get into this public exhibition that so enamors the media when it comes to private information.
It's not a hard question to answer.
Well, it's the easiest question in the world to answer, and my answer is you're not going to know unless you belong to my staff.
So you're not willing to tell us whether you...
No, I'm very happy to tell you everything that you're entitled to know. Remember the operative words, that you and the media are entitled to know.
Don't you think the public's entitled to know, though, given that you...
The public doesn't think so. Not one person in the public's asked me that question. And I'm not answering that question because it's none of your business.
Well, classic form.
Very good questioning there, Barry.
I think he does
by the way.
protest too much, though, Larry.
Yes.
I think.
Well, there are reports that he's been there 3 times, but anyway.
Well,
I don't know what for, but...
Who knows?
Yeah, okay, so I just want you to clarify. We know where the Greens stand on this, right, but with Labor, they are not ruling out.
Well, look, David Cunliffe has said, he was asked about this twice today. He said earlier in the day that, look, the judicial process must run its course. So if the courts decide that Kim.com should be extradited, then I think the Labor Party would have to toe the line. But equally on the other side, now they will be in coalition with the Greens. The Greens are saying they'll fight tooth and nail to allow this man to stay in the country because they feel that he's been treated unfairly. And certainly not by the law when we saw what the GCSB did when they were...
Yeah, but that was you see, the thing, and we've talked about this before, that was a raid. Now, some aspects of that may have been illegal, but that shouldn't detract from the FBI case on, his whole operation.
Well, that's true. I mean, and if the documentation's in order, I would think